Hey guys, Andre from High Performance Academy here. Thanks for joining us for this week's webinar. And this week we're going to be looking at how you can get wideband air fuel ratio data into HP Tuner's VCM scanner software. You'll find out how getting wideband data that's reliable into your scanner can really speed up the process of performing your tuning. Before we get into that though, just a few things that have been going on over the last week. And I'm going to actually start with a photo that we put up on our Instagram last week, and we'll head over to my laptop screen. So this is what probably could be considered a reasonably novel form of boost control here. We can see what are two fuel injectors sitting there on the front cam cover of Ken Block's Ford Escort Cosworth Gymkhana car. And this might seem like an unusual way of controlling the air pressure supply through to the internal wastegate on the Borg-Warner EFR turbocharger fitted here, but this is actually a technique that is quite popular. It's sort of one of those techniques that seems to be popular particularly in rally car circles, and I've sort of made a few comments about this and we got a few comments back, so I kind of wanted to elaborate on it a little bit. First of all, what we need to understand here, a few people brought up the fact that fuel injectors are made to have fuel flowing through them. Fair point. However, these are actually a CNG injector, so they are designed purely for flowing a gas, so it's not a problem that they aren't supplying a fuel through here. The nice thing about a fuel injector, of course, is that by its very design, it is designed to be very accurate in its control. So generally, with this technique set up correctly, we can expect the potential for slightly more accurate and fine control in comparison to using something like the very popular Mac 3-port or 4-port solenoids. And I think probably the bigger thing we need to consider here is that tuners and engine builders tend to be creatures of habit. We also tend to be a little bit superstitious. So a few people ask, well, why should we run one of these systems? It's not necessarily that we should run one of these systems. It's a case that these guys in World Rallying in particular stumbled on this technique. They tested it, they found it to be effective, and when you've got something that's working, basically the old story, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. So just an interesting take on a technology that's pretty well developed and I think we all probably take for granted, but I spied that when we were at Goodwood and thought it was quite an interesting technique, so I thought I'd elaborate on it a little bit. Now, for those who have been following our sagas with our Toyota 86 race car, we're only a few weeks away now from our first round of racing in the South Island Endurance Series. We're going to be heading to Invercargill, which is in the bottom of the South Island, around about 2.5 hours from where we are in Queenstown, for the first round at Teretonga Park. And we're still struggling with a few setup issues. We've got a few problems that we are sorting through, but the good news is that we are getting some headway with some of the problems that we have been facing. So again, for those who have been following, you will know that we were chasing some cooling issues, and happy to say that we have got the majority of those sorted out. So we'll just jump across to my laptop screen and I'll just go over again briefly what we've done here. So this is the front of the car, and when we purchased the car, we had a large oil cooler mounted right here, blocking a lot of flow into the radiator. So we wanted to be pretty certain that we could fix this. We were seeing initially engine coolant temperatures ranging in the vicinity of 108 to as high as 116 degrees C. Not great for power or for engine life expectancy. We wanted to be sure that some of these changes we had in mind were actually going to fix it. So one of them obviously was getting the oil cooler out from in front of the radiator. I actually talked to PWR over in Australia. Initially we were looking to purchase one of their radios and just showing that they are actually a really quality company to deal with, rather than selling me a product that they could have done. Instead what they asked for was all of the specifications of the size of the radiator that we're using, some pictures of how it was plumbed up, and straight away, basically given the power that our engine was making, they told me that the radiator we're running was more than adequate for 450 to 500 horsepower and our problem was elsewhere. They also gave me free information on a few subtle changes that we could make to the plumbing going, so that was really nice. It also gave us the confidence moving forward that we could leave that radiator there and try some other things. So again, moving back to our picture here, it is a little hard to see, but Brandon's been busy making some ducting. We've got a large Setrab oil cooler mounted over in the left-hand side corner, so that vents out into the inner fender well on the left-hand side of the car. We actually went through 2 iterations here, just getting the right size oil cooler. For those who have been watching, you may remember that I said that our oil temperatures were far better than what we were originally seeing, but over the course of just 5 or 6 laps, we were still seeing them climb in our data logging. They hadn't plateaued. So with this larger oil cooler here, we're now really comfortable with both our engine coolant temperature, which was staying between about 82 and 84 degrees C, and our oil temperature, which over a course of 6 or 8 laps never exceeded about 110 C, which is exactly where we wanted it to be. Moving on, we've also got our oil cooler mounted up on our TTI 6-speed sequential gearbox, making it easy there. TTI actually include this CNC sandwich plate between the housings, and it's got fittings straight into it for A-end connectors to plumb up to an external pump and cooler. TTI recommend that we don't run the oil temperature above 110 C. With the oil cooler fitted, we're seeing a maximum of about 95 to 96, so getting a little bit tight, but a little bit of headroom in there. Moving to the rear of the car, I've again shown a picture of this, but we have gone a little bit further since the last time I showed this. So we've got our little diff cooler, and for those who are about to jump on the keyboard and ask us why we've mounted the cooler where we have, and you need to understand that real estate in the rear of this car is at a premium. We did look at all sorts of options as to where we could fit it. One of the things we do need to keep in mind when we're choosing a location for an oil cooler is making sure that it's going to stay out of harm's way. In other words, we don't want it mounted right on the extremes of the car where some mild damage from a hit from another competitor could end up damaging the oil cooler, resulting in a leak and obviously the failure of that component completely. So while it's a little hard to see here, this is the main chassis rail running under the car here, so it is within that chassis rail. There is also running in behind it another fairly substantial piece of bodywork there. So we basically made the decision that if we end up getting hit hard enough that it fractures the oil cooler, we've probably got other things to worry about than making sure the oil stays in our diff. So I've got the little fan that's added in. So we found that with our previous iteration when we tested that, we were getting much better control of our oil temperatures, but we're still seeing them sit around 125 to 130 C. Not necessarily anything wrong with that, but the more concerning thing is that those temperatures in our data logging were still climbing quite quickly. So again, over the course of a 1-hour endurance race, I don't think we were quite where we needed to be. So we've added this fan in. We are also going to be ducting air into it because, again, for those who are eagle-eyed, you'll note there's really no obvious flow of air up to this cooler. So everything's going to be controlled there via our ECU, or actually what we're going to be doing is controlling this all via the dash. And just to neaten things up, we've also made the choice to go to an EcuMaster PMU-16. So this is a power management unit or a power distribution unit, power distribution module, whatever you want to call it, and basically this is going to be replacing our relays and it's going to be replacing our fuses. We at the moment are only making fairly minor use of this PMU. We're a little bit under a time crunch here, so we'll probably expand on its capabilities once we've got a little bit more time on our hands. For the moment, it's going to be controlling the pump for the gearbox cooler, it's going to be controlling the pump for the diff cooler, and it's also going to be controlling that little fan. Now the nice feature with this is the wiring is really simplified. As we can see here, we've got a single central terminal which is going to be a 12-volt feed straight from our battery, and essentially this becomes a control for the power distribution to all of those units using solid state switching. The other nice feature with this, as with most power distribution modules, is we can set the fusing current for each of the individual circuits, as well as some automated retry functionality. So if something is just getting a little bit marginal on current flow, we can have the PMU then retry that circuit a number of times, and this is quite important for reliability on a race car. It can be enough just to get you back to the pits. So everything here is also going to be controlled rather than via switch switches, we are using our Motec C125 dash logger, and this is going to communicate to the PMU via CAN. Makes it really easy. We can set certain flags for the switch on and switch off points for all of those components I've just talked about, and just send that data out via a 2-wire CAN bus. Much easier than wiring in individual switches. And really, again, in a race car, we don't want too much work for the driver, so we want all of this stuff to be happening in the background. The driver doesn't need to worry about it. Gets to a certain temperature and all of those components just switch on and do their job. So looking forward to getting that back to the track. I think hopefully, if everything goes well, Brandon and Ben will be heading to Teretonga at the end of this week to do some testing and get a little bit more data. Now, we also have been talking about our saga with our CVs and our rear axles, and testing about a week and a half ago now, we thought we got to the bottom of our problems. For those, again, who are remembering what we were talking about last time I did this, let's see if I've got a photo here that I can show you. Yes, we have. Let's just jump across to my laptop screen again, and I showed this photo a couple of weeks ago. We've got the fasteners for our rear CV on our Black 86 have all worked loose. Now, we put this up, and we've had a few comments on our YouTube channel about the use of spring washers on these fasteners and this being the problem. And I just want to point out, just to add a little bit more information, because I don't normally get much of a chance to sort of come back and go over these comments. So the spring washers there aren't something that we've actually added in. These are basically as supplied from Drive Shaft Shop, and that's what we're running as a set of the Drive Shaft Shop. I think they're rated at either 600 horsepower or 800 horsepower, their rear axles. So this is a feature that the Drive Shaft Shop include. We haven't gone and added them in. There is definitely some debate about the usefulness of spring washers. I am not here to argue that these are a fix for fasteners coming loose. Interestingly though, I will mention that all of our rear-wheel drive Toyota vehicles, in fact just about every rear-wheel drive vehicle I have from the OE manufacturer, also use spring washers where the drive shaft mounts to the rear diff flange. So OE seem to also think that this technique is suitable. Now, I just want to go into that a little bit more detail, because this is actually a known problem with the particular track that's local to us, Highlands Motorsport Park. So we've got another competitor that we work very closely with, who's running a Volkswagen Golf TCR race car. They've had exactly the same problem at Highlands Motorsport Park with their front CVs working loose like this. They don't have that issue at any other track. Interestingly, our other Toyota 86, which doesn't make quite as much power, isn't quite as fast, also has exactly the same Drive Shaft Shop axles. We've run that car here for about 4 years, and we've never had one of these CVs work loose. So, digging into it a little bit deeper, this is a bit of a hypothesis, but what we've come to the conclusion is that the issue is at Highlands Motorsport Park, there is a bridge that you go over. And with our V8 86, we've now got enough power that we're going fast enough over that bridge that essentially the car gets light enough that if you stay into the throttle hard enough, it'll light up and wheel spin. And the problem there is that when it lands, it grabs quite aggressively because you've got a hot slick on a track. So not great for anything in the rear of the car. But again, the competitor that we deal with their TCR, they've come to the conclusion that that's what's caused the issue in their particular car. So what we've done, and again I showed this last week, we'll just have a quick look again. We've gone to the extent of safety wiring the bolts that are going into the CV, and the reason we've done this is that it is a bulletproof solution. We know that with this done, unless the safety wire breaks, which it shouldn't be doing, we are not going to have issues with those CVs working loose. So that's the way we've gone with this. But to those people who were mentioning, yes, we are aware that the spring washers can be problematic, and if I can find it, if we jump across to my laptop screen, this is one of the suggestions that was made on our YouTube channel, and it is a great one. I haven't personally used these Nord-Lock locking washers, but I am aware of them, and from everything I've read, everything I've seen, clean, they do work very well. So basically, if you want to look at this in more detail, Google Nordlock and you can read all about them and see how they work. But basically, it's a pair of serrated washers, and these grip to the part that you're tightening against as well as the underside of the nut, and makes it very difficult for them to come loose. Again, for our intents and purposes, safety wiring is achieving the same aim. We're 100% confident that we're not going to have any issues with those coming loose. Now, talking about the rest of the upgrades on our car, one of the issues we've got when we are looking at endurance racing events is that we have to refuel the car. That's quite time consuming in a production car where we don't have a dry brake fuel system, and we want to be able to make sure we can get as much fuel into the car as quickly as we can, particularly that we are also a little bit light on fuel load given that we are just running the factory 50-litre fuel tank. So what I wanted to show you is, if we jump across my laptop screen, this is the factory fuel tank. Excuse the fact it's a little bit filthy, but it is getting on a little bit in age now given this car is a 2012 model. So we've got two fittings here on the side of the fuel tank. Obviously the main one there, that's our fuel supply and from the filler on the side of the car, and then just as importantly though, we've got this smaller one which is a vent. So obviously as you add fuel, you need to evacuate the air inside the fuel tank, otherwise your filling is going to be very slow. So what we've done is we've gone with we are in the process of going with a slightly interesting upgrade here. What we want to do is change this to a dry brake system. So first of all, what we're going to be doing is fitting one of these redhead dry brake fittings in the factory fuel filler in the side of the car. So this will be hidden beneath the factory fuel cap, so it's all going to be quite subtle. Interestingly, looking at the dimensions of everything there, it actually fits really nicely in the existing hole. And the other aspect with this is it does use a slightly larger diameter feed down to the fuel tank, allowing us to get fuel into the tank more quickly. As I mentioned though, to get the fuel in, we also need to get the air out, so we are replacing the factory breather with a larger diameter breather, and this will also use what's referred to here as a discriminator valve. So this is purposely designed for venting the fuel tank. Basically it allows air out but won't let fuel out. So you can see here particularly the diameter of it as well. Okay, no scale there, take my word for it though. Much larger than what we've got. So this is going to allow us to vent that air out a lot quicker. This also is going to prevent any fuel splashing out, which of course we don't want, particularly when everything's hot in the pits when we come in for a fuel stop, particularly the brakes, the exhaust system, everything's going to be very hot. So safety is a big priority there. And lastly, this is all going to be coupled up with one of these 5-gallon quick fill dump tanks. So this works in conjunction with that dry brake system and it allows a really, really quick filling. I can't remember the exact numbers on this, but I think it was able to do with their 40-litre tank. It was able to fill or drain 40 litres in something like 15 seconds. So I'm not sure we're going to quite get to there with the restriction we'll still have on the air vent, but we should be a hell of a lot quicker than using the existing fuel tanks or fuel cells that we were using. And as part of this pit stop, we also need to do a driver change. So it's safe to say that the driver change is going to take longer than fueling the car anyway. Alright, so I just wanted to also jump across and have a quick look at some data here, and I put up a little bit of data in one of our last pre-shows and we got a lot of people sort of commenting that they found that quite interesting. So I can't really get into too much detail here without spending sort of 15 minutes on it, but I just wanted to show you a couple of aspects of where data logging can be really important. And of course, you can spend a huge amount of money on data analysis systems. Even the system that we do have in our V886 is quite pricey. We've got a Motec C125 dash logger that's taking all of the data from the factory sensors via the factory CAN bus and the Toyota 86. So we've got things like wheel speeds, we've got things like steering angle, brake pressure, etc. Stuff that normally costs a hell of a lot more to get sensors into your car. We've also got all of the information from the Motec M150 ECU, and then we've added GPS as well. So we've got lap lap timing, and we've also got track mapping as well. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to go and spend thousands on a data logging unit, though. There are some really cost-effective options on the market, products such as the V-Box system, suction cup to your windscreen, and are going to give you a huge amount of data for a relatively minimal cost. But I just wanted to show you some of the things that we are going to want to look at when we are analyzing data. So if we jump across to my laptop screen here, and we're in Motex i2, but essentially any data analysis software package is going to be able to provide you the same sort of functionality. So I just want to go over the data that we've got here. So at the top chart here, we're looking at our engine RPM, probably one of the data channels that we'd like to have where possible. For a entry-level system, though, you're probably not going to have that, but we can also tell a lot with this channel here, which is in blue, our corrected speed. In this case, that's coming from a GPS input, but you can get this from wheel speeds as well. We've also got our throttle position in orange, which shows us a huge amount of information about how the driver is driving the car. We've got our steering angle, probably one of the more advanced functions which we can use for sort of starting to analyze some of the car setup and handling. And then we've got our lateral G-force. So just a few channels there, but you don't really need a lot. And what we're going to look at here is a function or a channel that all data analysis packages will have in it, which is called the variance channel. It's a really powerful way of being able to analyze 2 laps to see where you are faster or where you are slower. So right here I've got 2 laps loaded up. We'll just have a quick look at our data. So I've got a lap as our overlay, which was a 49.08. I've also got, let's actually go with our fastest laps, probably a good idea. Let's go with 2 fast laps. So we'll go with a 48.61 as our overlay, a 48.13, which was the fastest lap of that session, as our main lap. And what this does, it brings up our overlay lap in grey. So you can see all of the channels here in grey. These are from the overlaid lap. So if we, actually before we do that, I also just want to mention that when we are analysing data from 2 laps like this, there's 2 ways we can analyse the data. And in the i2 software, we can swap between these by using this little clock icon, or alternatively pressing F9. So what this will do is it will swap the x-axis between time and distance. And this is a really easy trap to fall into when you are analysing data. Obviously, if you are driving a faster lap, then certain things on the lap will happen at a different point in the data. So when we're analysing data and we want to see what we were doing at a specific point on the track, we always want to make sure that we are analysing using distance as our x-axis. That means we're looking at comparable data from the same point on the track, not the same timestamp. All right, with that out of the way, let's have a quick look, and we're going to press F3, which will bring up our variance channel. So basically with our variance channel, it shows us, compared to our overlay, whether we are doing better or whether we're doing worse. And it's really easy in particular to start focusing on a particular area and look at where the main gains or losses were had. So we can see in this particular instance here, we've got quite a large swing in our variance. We've gone from, at this point, 0.13 to, in this point here, minus 0.31. So that's a big difference. So we'd want to really analyze that and have a look in a little bit more detail about why that happened. And what we can see is the reason that we have that variance is that the driver was a little bit later on the brakes, and that we can see in our speed channel. You can see that it takes a little bit longer for the driver to get on the brakes, and that's why we see this improvement in that lap time, because the car is going faster. Now, a really easy trap to fall into when you are analyzing that is that this looks great and you've gained a lot of time there because you've got on the brakes later. Well, don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that getting on the brakes later is going to mean that you're going to carry more speed into the corner and go faster. The problem is we need to look at the whole picture there, because if we carry too much speed into the corner because we've braked too late, we may not be able to get the car slowed down, we may not be able to get it turned in and hit our apex, and that's going to end up compromising our mid-corner speed and, just as importantly, or maybe more importantly, our corner exit. And we have seen that that's exactly what's happened here. We've gained up to the apex, but as you can see here, we start to lose some of that momentum that we've picked up, some of that time we've picked up. So really quick introduction there just to the variance channel, and again, regardless what data analysis package you're using, there will be something similar like this. And it's a really great way, if you are trying to improve your driving, is to use a data analysis package and then go and put a professional driver in the car, get them to go and put in a reference lap, and then you can use that reference lap alongside your own laps using this variance channel, and you can see exactly where you're faster or slower. Probably chances are you're slower than the pro driver, and this is a great place to figure out where to focus your efforts when you're trying to improve your lap times. Just doing something like that for most amateur or club level drivers, putting a pro in the car and getting that sort of data, I would be surprised if you can't pull somewhere in the region of a second a lap off your own lap time. So just a quick introduction there to data analysis, because we did have a few people commenting that they enjoyed that. All right, moving on, and we have just released our latest video, so we'll head across to my laptop screen, and this was an interview that we shot while we were visiting Jeff Page Racing. I'll apologize for the dismal resolution that we're currently getting on my laptop, but I assure you that if you go watch it on our YouTube channel, there we go, nice and sharp all of a sudden. It will be nice and sharp just like that. So Jeff Page Racing is pretty well known for rebuilding all manner of old historic race cars. Jeff in particular is a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of information. He has worked through the F1 turbo era. In particular, he worked for Brian Hart, designer of the 415T turbocharged engine. That is the topic of this particular video. And the car behind us is Ayrton Senna's car that he drove in his debut F1 season, debuting at his home race, the Brazilian Grand Prix. This is the Tolman Hart F1 car. So obviously technology has come a long way, but in this interview we talk about the original F1 era and how they were able to get so much power out of these engines, the limitations of the controls that were available, particularly around fuel injection at the time, and the interesting aspects around the Hart 415T engine, the fact that they got around head gasket integrity issues by using a monoblock design where the head and block are essentially cast as one. And before someone pipes up and mentions that this isn't a new technology, no, absolutely, Hart definitely didn't invent it. But still, I think it bears some merit given the power levels that these F1 engines were producing, and the fact that it's obviously a bulletproof solution to head gasket integrity issues, albeit brings its own set of problems along the lines of actually machining the likes of the valve seats, etc. So if you aren't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, make sure you do so, and that will make sure that you aren't going to miss out on any of our new video releases. Check that video out. There's some really interesting details in it. Last but not least, we are still running our diamond piston giveaway. That giveaway only has, I think, about 1 day to run. So if you are considering a engine building project, the giveaway includes any of Diamond's off-the-shelf piston sets, regardless what engine you're working on. As long as they support it with an off-the-shelf piston, you're going to get a full piston set. You're also going to get that our engine building starter package, so you're going to know exactly what to do with those pistons. That will include our engine building fundamentals course. It will include our practical engine building course. It's also going to include a membership to our online community so that you can ask any questions that crop up once you start installing those pistons. So the team will chuck a link in the comments that you can follow if you want to get your name into the draw for those pistons. And while you will have to be quick, there are also a few other tasks that you can complete that will give you more entries and more chances to win. Alright, thanks for watching everyone. Give me a few moments and we'll get started with today's webinar.